commemoration of the National Remembrance Day for Victims of Terrorism, Canada's Canadian Security Intelligence Service has paid tributes to the 329 people who were killed in the deadly Air India bombing of 1985, when all people on board the Air India flight were killed after a bomb was planted on the flight. The June 23, 1985 incident remains one of the deadliest terror attacks in the history of global aviation and also the history of Canada. Recounting the events of that day, the CSIS called it an act of terror, which it said was carried out by Canada-based Khalistani extremists. On the fateful day, members of the Babbar Khalsa, a Khalistani terror outfit, had planted a bomb in the Air India Flight 182, which exploded when the aircraft was flying over the Atlantic Ocean while flying from Montreal to London. Most of the people who had died in that tragic incident were Canadians or people of Indian origin. In a Facebook post, the CSIS recounted that fateful day and said that it was only a year old at that time and the tragedy had shaped its own evolution. It said that over the past 4 decades, the CSIS had remained committed to protect Canadians from political, religious, and ideologically motivated violence. In the recent past, the CSIS has repeatedly identified Khalistani extremism as a persistent threat to national security. And in its public report that came out in 2025, it had noted that Canada-based Khalistani extremists were present in Canada in small but active number and had been engaged in several activities, including propaganda, fundraising, and support for politically motivated violence directed at India. While Canadian agencies have identified Khalistani extremism as a persistent threat to their national security, in the recent past it has been noted that at several times there has been public display of anti-India activity on Canadian soil by Khalistani extremists who have in fact indulged in tearing of Indian flags and have also taken out processions that have displayed the former Indian Prime Minister Indira Gandhi as being targeted by persons wearing turbans, even as India has repeatedly objected to these processions and activities by Khalistani extremists. In fact, sources in the Indian agencies have also raised concerns why Canada continues to allow such processions and activities from its soil. The acknowledgement of the Air India bombing as an act of terror carried out by Canada-based Khalistani extremists comes at a time when India and Canada are looking to reset ties between the two countries after the relationship had been jolted by public allegations leveled by former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, who had accused India of having a hand in the killing of Khalistani extremists Hardeep Singh Nijjar on Canadian soil. The issue had led to a prolonged standoff between the two countries, but ever since Prime Minister Makarni took over as the head of the state, both countries have tried to reset ties with a fresh outlook, even as Canada has remained cautious in its approach towards India in the backdrop of the Nijjar controversy. In February 2026, India's National Security Advisor Ajit Doval had visited Ottawa and had met his counterpart and other officials of Canada in a visit that was largely seen as an attempt to deepen cooperation on the national security and counter-extremism measures. Now, with this acknowledgement of the CSIS of the Air India bombing as a terror incident coming on the anniversary of one of the deadliest terror attacks in the global aviation history, it needs to be recounted that there was a second bomb that had also been planted, which in fact had imploded at a Tokyo airport, killing 2 baggage handlers. The kin of the victims of the flight bombing continue to look at it as the most dreadful phases of their life. We'll keep tracking major developments. This is Shikha Salaria reporting from New Delhi for India Abroad.